A shift in consciousness can open up a whole new world for us, allowing us to see the world and our experiences from different perspectives, and even helping us to realize and accept that being wrong is actually no big deal. Blessings, blessings, blessings. Hello, friends. Welcome to or welcome back to So I Came Across This Post, the podcast where we take snippets of online content and turn it into whole think pieces. I am your host, Charlie, the self-proclaimed ambassador of shamelessly embracing and living your truth. And it's another week. Hi, how are you? How have you been doing? What is up? What is going on? What is the energy? What's the vibes? I pray that you all are well. I'm sending you all a virtual hug, giving thanks for your presence in this space right now. I give thanks. This week's content is a bit encouraging and personal, but before we get into it, I do want to give a thanks to our new subscribers and everyone who has checked out an episode, part of an episode, and or share the link with family and friends. I appreciate you. Please continue to listen in, subscribe, leave a comment, leave a rating, and all the supportive things. I am so grateful for you. And know that I can feel the love and I am grateful for it. Thank you for activating that. I appreciate you. And as a reminder, we cite our sources of inspiration. All links and information related to the content I discussed in this episode will be available on our website, soicamecrossthispost.com. Under the label episodes, just go to episode 8 and the show notes will detail the links to the inspiring content as well as any other content we use or mention in addition to that. So we cite our inspiration. Hello, we give thanks. So for this week's content that inspired this episode, we have a post from X, formerly known as Twitter, from Divine Conscious, okay? Divine Conscious says, when you awaken, it becomes easier to accept that you can be wrong about many things. And it doesn't matter because you become humble enough to accept it's a continuous process, a learning, unlearning, and relearning. Whew, okay, when I read this, I was like, yes, yes, yes. Because awakening really does change you, right? I don't know if it changes you as much as it changes your expression because you awaken to things that you weren't aware of before. And because of that, it changes your perspective and as a result, changes your experience. It changed the way you perceive the world and I also say I feel like as I was outlining and preparing for this episode, I thought about just like what my awakening experience has been like, and I thought about how it has softened me up. Like I used to be so tense and so focused on getting life right and things had to be a certain way and things needed to go a certain way. I was such a planner and someone who would plan, accomplish things, and plan something else. Like I was very rarely in the practice of just being with what was, right? Celebrating the journey. And at some point I started to, right? And then in that I realized just how much I was missing out on by just going and not taking a moment to just breathe. And I feel like awakening invites you to that. For those not familiar with the concept of awakening or awakening is about things making it to your awareness, your consciousness, you being aware of it. And spiritual awakening is an experience of one or more profound shifts in consciousness that brings about a greater understanding of the mysteries of life and the interconnectedness of all things. It's about expanding your awareness. It's about expanding your perspective. It's about being able to see more of the whole, getting out of the forest getting out of just seeing trees and stepping back to see the forest. It opens our mind to more possibilities and help us recognize our interdependence. Now, granted, everybody awakening journey will look different. They will become aware of different things, right? All of our journeys do not look the same, and all of our journeys do not unfold in the same way. But I will say that generally, everyone I know who have been on their awakening journey, and myself, it has really just been about expanding the mind, considering more, opening up to different perspectives, recognizing our interdependence, recognizing our connectedness, recognizing that we are all from source, recognizing that we mirror each other. It's these aha moments, these awakenings, this awareness being exposed for us to see and experience more. And so when I read this post, I thought about how humbling my awakening or remembrance journey has been. I thought about how arrogant I used to be, how afraid I was to truly be seen, and how defensive I was in hopes of keeping my ego and stories protected. I had this friend ask me one time, what would happen if I found out that Christianity wasn't real? And I'm quoting real. And I remember telling him, like, okay, I don't know. And with time, I started to realize that a lot of times when we have beliefs and we are attached to something, that when that something is found to not be as sturdy as we thought it was, and not be as true as we thought it was, or not hold the power and significance as we thought it was, sometimes we lose our footing. Because we are so attached to that thing that we are identifying with it. So when we find out that this thing is not true, this is not what it says it is, we tend to feel like a part of ourselves are lost. But the thing was, when he asked me that question, I wasn't attached to Christianity. I myself have been questioning it. I had so many questions that many people felt like I shouldn't be asking. And so for me, if you're like getting defensive when I ask questions or not having solid answers, I'm kind of wondering, how did you learn this? Where did you learn this from? And is it as true as you say it is? And I feel like part of that is what awakening does. It questions the things that you're attached to. It questions the stories. It helps you to question the stories you tell yourself. It invites you to be curious about who you say you are. Who do you say everyone around you is? And how dependent you are on that story. In the awakening, I realized that there's so much I don't know. There's so much I don't know. And so much I didn't realize. So much was not in my awareness. And I feel like that alone was a humbling experience. To know that I didn't know everything. To know that there was so much I wasn't aware of. So much that I didn't even know existed. Like, there are worlds out there. There are cultures and beliefs and groups and experiences that people are having that I could never understand because I have not been exposed to that world, and I haven't been exposed to the culture of it. And you realize that people, cultures, and their communities and the things that they are a part of really do influence the way they see the world, really do influence the way that they interact with the world. And I feel like knowing that alone was humbling. Because who am I to say that that's not true or that's not correct when it's an experience you had? Who am I to say that it's impossible just because I haven't experienced it? There's so many experiences I realize that I have that other people don't really understand, but it doesn't change that I had those experiences. That is my truth. And just because they never had it and don't understand it and never seen it doesn't make it any less true. And so as I experience these things, right, as I go through life, as I notice it, I realize how much I don't know. And that became a very humbling experience. It kind of helped me take the armor off because I realized that, like, you might be right. You might be right. And that is okay. You might be right, and that is okay. And I don't need to argue with your beliefs. They're beliefs. They can change. Like, why am I arguing with your beliefs? And so, on this journey of awakening, on this path, I really have noticed just how humbling the experience in and of itself is, and just how important it is to accept what is, and to accept my human experience, and to accept that there's some imperfections, and it doesn't change how worthy I am, how loving I am, how loved I am, how I am love. Through my awakening journey, I have been humbled by life. I have been reminded that to be human is to be fallible, is to be flawed. And a lot of times it's to be wrong. To be human is to fall, to get to the top of the ladder and in the middle of a project, fall off of it. To be human is to fuck up sometimes. It's to make silly choices, to disappoint people, to feel the emotions of energy like fear, anger, and shame, and to be okay with it, knowing that it's part of our human experience. If we pay attention, we will witness that reminders that as humans, we are equal. No one is better than you, and you're not better than anyone else. And no human gets to escape the experience and all that it entails. And though our experiences aren't exactly the same, the reality that none of us get to escape the human experience, none of us get to avoid suffering, none of us get to avoid loss or the concept of loss, none of us get to avoid emotions. And hopefully, like, that reminder and that knowing will encourage us to be kind, empathetic, compassionate, and patient with one another. And in turn, encourage people to not be afraid of being wrong, of fucking up, of needing to start again a couple of times. The awakening journey is an invitation, in my opinion, to explore more. It's to live bolder. It's to give life a try, and it's to explore. Instead of allowing everyone to tell you what it means to be human, what it looks like to be human, you get to decide that for yourself. And that is the gift, one of the gifts of awakening. And with that, through this week's post, I am inspired to come here and talk about acceptance. I feel as if acceptance is such an important part of the awakening journey, such an important part of being with what is, and such an important part of experiencing joy, ease, flow in our lives. When we are fighting what is, we are creating tension. But when we allow what is to be without judging it, without trying to fight it, without wishing it away, we can experience flow, more space, and just more possibilities. Before we get into the topic of acceptance, I wanted to reread the post just so it's fresh on our minds, okay? Divine Conscious says, when you awaken, it becomes easier to accept that you can be wrong about many things, and it doesn't matter because you become humble enough to accept it's a continuous process of learning, unlearning, and relearning. As someone on the awakening journey, I definitely hard repost this post, okay? Because it is a post that speaks volumes. Like, I really resonate with this deeply, and I know that most of the content I talk about, I resonate with deeply, or it gets me really curious. But this is a post that I feel like I would be like, I agree. Because I recognize that I stopped being scared to be wrong. I stopped having anxiety around the idea that I may mess up. And though anxiety may come up, like, I don't let it stop me anymore because I'm not afraid to face the idea of being wrong. I am constantly reminded that I am one with all that is, that everyone I come into contact with is a mirror of me, and that each individual is an expression of what is possible, what it might look like to be human, how it might express. It's not about right or wrong, because reality is, right, what may be correct for you may not be correct for me. That's what it means, and that's what it looks like to be human, to have our human experience. And there's so much peace in knowing that we have nothing to prove. There's so much peace in knowing that we don't have to keep up with the idea or the beliefs of what it means to be human, what it looks like to be human. We don't have to uphold standards. We get to decide for ourselves what that expression looks like. Continuously, a process of learning, unlearning, and relearning. Continuously. But where I am as far as my journey goes, and where I am when it comes to being humbled, and where I am when it comes to accepting that the awakening journey is an ongoing one. And not only is it ongoing, but we're constantly learning, remembering, releasing, integrating different energies, different beliefs, different processes. And so when I decided, when I looked at the post and I thought about my own awakening journey, and I thought about how I came from arrogant to humbled, and how I got from nice to kind, and from self-centered to compassionate. When I thought about that, I realized it was all through acceptance. My practice of acceptance. Accepting my emotions, accepting what is, accepting life, accepting endings, accepting new beginnings, accepting the unexpected, accepting of the reality that I am a human being and I had no idea what I was doing, but I was here for a good ass time and I was going to give it a good go. I'm going to give it a good go. And so when I accepted these things, my life shifted, my energy shifted, and how I started to relate with the world shifted. And in my opinion, it was for the better. It was more love filled. It was more easeful, and it feels like magic. I didn't even know any of this was possible. So to have this experience, to live my life the way I do now, knowing what I used to experience, knowing what my life used to look like, knowing how I used to be a warrior, knowing how I was always on go mode, to know that I recognize and now live in a space where there is flow, where I'm not trying to control everything anymore, where I'm not trying to manipulate people or situations or things to agree with me. There's something magical and beautiful and exciting about that. And it's also a reminder that there's so much more. Because I didn't know that I wasn't experiencing peace until I experienced peace. I didn't know that I was in survival mode until I started to slow down and stop being afraid every time something didn't go as expected. When I awakened to how I was operating and recognized that that's not how I wanted to operate, and started to implement ways that supported a more easeful life, that supported a nervous system that could be in neutral more often than not, as opposed to overactive. It's been a constant reminder that there's so much more to life. The fact that I have this whole new experience that I've never heard about, that I did not witness anyone else around me living, and to now live in this space, to be in this space, to see how good it feels to my body and my soul. Awakening has a way of reminding you that this is a continuous journey, that things are constantly unfolding, that you are shedding aspects of yourself that you used to say you were, and embodying different energy, embodying different aspects of yourself, and knowing that who you show up in who you show up as in this moment can be very different than the you that shows up tomorrow. And it doesn't mean that you're fake. And it doesn't mean that you don't know who you are. It simply means that there is a more. And there is always more. And so when this post talks about accepting is a continuous process of learning, unlearning, and relearning, I say yes. I say yes. What I believe is that a big part of our disappointment and beef with life is due to our perspective of what is happening, our expectation of what should be happening, the stories we tell ourselves, and the way we are in relation with the world. I think the first step may be to accept the world for what it is. And so through my awakening journey, I have learned to accept what I believe are some important things in order for me to be humble, in order for me to remember my humanity, and in order for me to love unconditionally. And I want to share some of those practices with you all because this is this is what was inspired from the post. When you awaken, it becomes easier to accept that you can be wrong about many things. And it doesn't matter because you become humble enough to accept it's a continuous process of learning, unlearning, and relearning. Accept. Accept that you may be wrong. Accept that it's a continuous process. So what are some ways I've done that? I feel like one of the ways I've been practicing acceptance is accepting my humanity. I cared way too much about what people thought of me. Like, what? Even when I would say I didn't care, I actually did. And in caring, I could be performative in my reactions and responses and seeking to be acceptable in some cases. I had to accept myself radically, all of me. I had to be so okay with myself so that when others didn't approve, it didn't change how I saw myself. It wasn't a deciding factor of whether or not I was worthy. I wasn't always looking for external validation or approval or acceptance. I could just accept my humanity. And as I was learning to accept myself, now I call it radical self-acceptance. I have radical self-acceptance. I practice radical self-acceptance. And that's accepting me in any area of my life. That's accepting every single part of me, even the parts that I am not excited about, even the parts of me that I am not satisfied with. I practice accepting and coming to peace with it. Accepting it as part of a shared human experience. Reminding myself that I am not alone in this. That as humans, these are things we get to experience. We get to be disappointed. We get to experience shame. We get to experience jealousy. We get to experience anger. We get to experience fear. And though it may not always express the same or feel the same or come as consistently for one person as it does another, it doesn't change that we have the potential to experience it. And that potential to experience and it actually being an experience will not change the fact that you are always enough. That we are worthy, that we have purpose, that we are here with and created and designed with intention. Bigger than us. Way more important than just our single woes. It is a collective journey we're on, right? Doing our individual parts. And so when I shifted my perspective from me to we, I feel like it really did help me to experience this world differently and also give myself permission to live. See, I recognize in my awakening journey and how I was showing up and just being self-reflecting, right? Paying attention to myself, becoming more of an observer and recognizing my own issues, my internal battles that sometimes I probably was projecting outside of me onto others. Like my issues with my body image, my issues that I had with being emotional. I was unkind to myself. I was hard on myself. The way I allowed other people's beliefs and stories to dictate my expectations and beliefs about the world was such a whoo moment. When I realized the stories that were playing in the background, when I realized where I got those stories from, where I started to when I started to believe what I believe, when I started to be judging myself, I realized that it was never me. It was what I picked up from other people. It was what I allowed to be my truth because either it was said so often or it came from people that I trusted and respected. I was allowing other people to tell me what it was like to be human. And clearly, right, like it is what it is. At the end of the day, we're all conditioned, right? We're all raised and nurtured in a way to help us be successful adult human beings, right? Whatever that means, whatever that looks like. But the idea is that as children, we are raised to eventually go out and be on our own, to become independent. And in that raising and in that upbringing, we are conditioned, we are programmed, we are taught things, we are given beliefs in order for us to, with the best, usually with the best intentions, right? Because the idea is to keep us safe, protected, and thriving in this world. But a lot of times, what it ends up doing for some of us is actually stunting us, stunting our truth, stunting our light, dimming our magic, because we have been told that standing out, being loud and proud, being authentically you, being different is a negative thing. Looking different, being emotional, being sensitive is often a negative thing. And it depends on what background you come from, what culture you're a part of. But I know for me, like being sensitive was weak. There was something wrong with it. You shouldn't be crying all the time. Granted, I still cry. But it was often like, why are you crying? You're a crybaby. Da da da. That it wasn't supported. And the people around me did not have the skills and the coping mechanisms to help guide me in understanding these emotions, to help me process these emotions, to help me understand these emotions. And so I didn't learn to do this until I got older and during my awakening journey. So in recognizing that there were stories that I was carrying around and beliefs I was living by that weren't necessarily mine, I started to pay more attention to my thoughts, pay more attention to my actions, question myself about what is that rooted in? Where did that come from? Why do you believe that? Is there something else that you could believe? Is there another potential reasoning? And I started to reprogram myself. I started to release the brainwashing, right? That continuous learning, unlearning, and relearning, right? Releasing the brainwashing and reprogramming myself. So if I thought like, hey, I need to have a flat stomach. If I don't have a flat stomach, I'm this, I'm that, da da da. Then I will take that and be like, no, my body is always perfect. My body serves the season that I'm in. My body is communicating with me and telling me things. My body is healthy and it is strong. My body do some amazing things. My body is magic. And with time, I learned to accept my body as it was in every season. I reminded myself that I'm always going to feel like something should be different. Something could be different. Unsatisfied with something. And now I thought that was always going to be the case, right? And so that's what I told myself in that season. But I have to say now that I don't feel like something can always be better anymore. I have created a rubric to let me know when I feel good in my body. And when I don't, I take the necessary steps to make the shifts. But in the meantime, in between time, I'm being kind to myself. I'm not judging myself. I'm not looking at myself like, oh, you gross. You know, I have learned to accept my body in every season. I have learned to accept the capabilities of my body. And I have learned to appreciate my body. I don't have to be miserable and rude where I am now, right? Like, I can accept my body for what it is. I can accept my experience for what it is. And I get to love on myself and be excited about what's next. And I know that this is another experience that I get to have. I mean, when we think about it, there are so many possibilities in every moment. They say it's like thousands in every moment. And this is the one I got. Why this one? I started to become curious about the unfolding of life too, right? Like, clearly, I am already a person that believes that everything happens for a reason. So now that I'm in this experience where I might be feeling unhappy with my body, or I might be feeling unhappy or unsatisfied with a job, right? I get to get curious about, why am I having this experience? Where is this experience leading me to? And there's just something exciting about that. And it's and I take that as like accepting my humanity, accepting that there are so many possibilities, accepting that this too shall pass, accepting that more is to come, accepting that I can feel like shit, I don't like this, I don't enjoy this. And it's okay. I don't have to be mean to myself for not being excited or not feeling good about where I am on my journey. I can just accept that this is a sign, right? This is my emotions guiding me to something new. This is an invitation. What will I do with it? And so I mentioned that even my emotions was something I had to learn to accept. And when it came to my emotions, I was reminded that emotions are messengers. They are spontaneous sensations that come up to allow our bodies to communicate with us. And so when I feel ashamed, embarrassed, sad, and even if I experience jealousy, right? Like, I can be okay in that feeling, knowing that it is a message to me. I can feel it without judging myself harshly or feeling as if I shouldn't feel it. I think jealousy is such an important and such an interesting emotion, because people talk about jealousy like it's such this bad and negative thing, but reality is like, feeling jealousy can let you know that there's something you desire, right? And so it can inspire you. But we tend to look at some of these denser energies or some of these kind of friction like energies as negative things, when in fact they're neither negative or positive. They just is. And in that existence or in that presence of them, we can create something new. We can recognize that we want more. We can recognize that we're desiring another experience. And then with that now awareness, right? Because the emotions has helped us to have awareness of like, hey, I desire that thing, or I desire that experience. Now with this awareness, you can go out and create something. You can go out and seek an experience or an adventure or whatever it is that you want to do. Perspective. So yeah, I learned to not judge myself so harshly. I learned to allow myself to have emotions. And even when people said I was emotional, I stopped taking it so personal. Or when they said oh, you're being sensitive, I stopped taking it so personal. Yes, I'm feeling emotions. And like, I'm not going to feel bad about them, and I'm not going to be afraid to express what's coming up for me. Just because you're uncomfortable or you don't like what I'm saying, that's a you problem, right? But I'm going to honor myself. I'm going to honor my emotions. I'm going to honor what's coming up for me. In all actuality, right? Emotions are part of our human experience. It's data and information to help guide us. If I'm angry, it's usually a reminder of something I value, something I care about, something I'm passionate about. So I can use that anger and pour that energy into a project. Or I can break something, right? Whatever it is I need to do to release that anger, that energy, to transmute that energy, then I have the opportunity to do that because now I am aware of it. When we have awareness of our emotions, when we have awareness of how we're feeling, we can then decide what to do with that awareness, how to utilize that energy, right? Because though we may not be in control of our emotions, we are in control of how we choose to respond. Emotions are a part of our human experience. We can't shake them. I know that I have been around people who the only emotions they feel, at least they believe, is anger and happiness, right? Like that is their spectrum. Like there's anger, there's happiness, the in between, not so much. And so I always thought that was interesting. But nonetheless, they're still experiencing emotions, right? Our emotions can act as a guide for us, providing information and data that can be used to expand our awareness and our experience, for us to come back home to self, for us to remember our own truth, for us to know what needs attention in our life, what is asking for our attention in this season, in this moment, because there's just so many possibilities. There's so much you can care about. There's so much you can put your attention on. And so, out of all the possibilities, this is the one we have. Whatever it is in this moment, this is the one we have. Why now? Why this? What is the message here, if any? And so I feel like when I started to accept myself, whether that was accepting my body, accepting my emotions, I feel like those were the two things that I remember really journeying with for some time. And when that started to happen, I became deeper obsessed with myself. I grew in love with myself more and more. And in that, I started to love everybody around me deeper. I started to see us all in a new light. I started to recognize that so many of us are in pain. So many of us is in survival mode. So many of us is afraid and confused and unsure. And we're just all expressing it and it looks different. But I started to see myself in everyone I came in contact with. Some things were like exciting to witness and watch, and some things were just like, damn, I hope I don't do that again. Because I really do be praying. When I see certain things, I really will pray over myself. Like, Spirit, please, if I ever get in that situation, help me to have awareness, right? Help me to slow down. Help me to have a space in between the stimulus and my response, right? Like, I really be out here praying, okay, in these moments, because I know that everything that's within a person is also within me. They are reflecting possibilities to me. So is that a possibility I would want? Is that an experience I would want? And if I was to have that experience, how would I want to feel in it? And I'm not saying everybody needs to do this, right? This is just my relationship with the world. This is how I interact with the world. And it's fun for me. It's exciting for me. It's simple for me, right? But your interaction with the world and everyone else's interaction with the world and with their idea of what it means to be human looks different. And that's okay. That is part of the journey, I believe. I started to value people at another level during this journey, right? I started to feel so connected to each of us. I've even met versions of myself that I wasn't proud of and I did not enjoy at all. And so that experience helped me to realize and accept that there are parts of my personality that I am not satisfied with. And I am kind and gentle to myself as I address them. But that is part of being human. It's this uncovering, it's this remembrance, it's this awakening of the levels, of the possibilities of what is, and hopefully coming to peace with it. I read this quote from Bianca Rodriguez that I think is like so cute. And it says that being human is messy business. Learning to love your messiness is one of the greatest gifts you'll ever give yourself. And indeed, it is a doorway to some beautiful and exciting experiences. Being human is messy business. And I've had to agree. It's messy, but gosh, is it beautiful. Gosh, is it lovely. Gosh, does it feel like a fucking hug. Okay? When I need one the most. When I desire one the most. Okay? In addition to accepting my humanity, I also needed to accept that what has happened has already happened. I don't know about y'all, but I used to be definitely one of those people that used to, like, after argument or after discussion or after meeting that wasn't planned, or even if it was planned, that after it, I think about all the things I would have said, all the things I could have said, right? And so, like, instead of doing that now, I accept that, hey, what happened already happened. There's literally nothing you can do to change it. Leave it where it is, right? Don't carry that around with you. Accept that that thing happened and now we're moving on. And so I had to accept that there's nothing I can do to change what already happened. All I can do is make a new choice at this moment. That's it. Right? What is. And so the reality that no amount of what if, I should have, why didn't I, is going to bring me that moment back. It's not going to give me a redo. So accepting it and then allowing the lesson, if there is any, to process is like my best choice. It's the most correct thing for me. And I know the idea of like letting go and accepting what is easy in theory and can be a bit challenging in practice. But I still would encourage us to practice and never give up on it. Sometimes it'll be easy to accept what is, to be with what is in a moment. And there will be other times where it will be a little bit more challenging. And regardless of what, choosing to continue to practice have great benefits. Sometimes it'll be easy. Other times it'll take a little more time. And it's all okay. Accept the process, allow the process, accept that no two experiences are exactly the same. No two experiences are exactly the same. Allow life to be. When we are working with acceptance, I think we can go back to the part of the post that says, like, you become humble enough to accept. It's a continuing process of learning, unlearning, and relearning. Accept what is. Know that that moment you had, if there's some things you wish you would have said differently, done differently, pocket it. Pocket it. Take it with you in your next experience. And I see this process or experience of accepting what is as our way of allowing life to soften for us. Right? Think about it. You're not trying to control things. You're not wishing things away. You're not fighting with what is. You're allowing it. You're surrendering to it. You're saying, thank you. I'm happy you are here. What can we grow from this? What can we create from this? How can I journey with the ingredients of this, the lesson of this, the experience of this, the memory of this, right? Whatever it is at that moment or that experience has provided you, now what? I don't know. I feel like with learning to or practicing accepting what is and recognizing that there's literally nothing I can do about what was or what has already happened, you know, part of that became okay. Part of that has helped me be okay with the human experience because it's a reminder to allow what is to be. We lessen the wishing things away. We reduce the amount of times we throw adult tantrums because we were told no, or things didn't go the way we expected, or we felt rejected in some way. So instead of like lashing out and being angry and allowing our inner child to take over, we can just accept, hey, this is what it is. I don't like it. It doesn't feel good, but this is what it is. Now what? And even as I say that, we can accept that we will experience tough emotions and sometimes tough and challenging experiences. And regardless of how we are told we should feel, we can remember that none of it makes us any less human, any less connected to all that is. It doesn't change the core of who we are. We let go of the need or habit of attempting to control things and we allow life to happen for us. Yeah. I think one of the most impactful things was accepting life as it came. And it's a continual practice. And that's why, like, all of these things I'm talking about, all of these things I'm saying is a practice. And the reason why I call it a practice is because every situation will be different, right? There's some things that, some experiences you will have that are awakened or triggered or activated. And it's not going to be so easy to just accept it as it is, right? It might be a lot more challenging for you. You may have to keep reminding yourself, it's over, it's over, it's over. It may take a day. It may take 2 days, you know? But that's part of the experience. And that's why it's a practice, because you may never feel like you got it completely figured out, because every situation, every time you're activated, will look and feel and be connected to something different. and the work it might require, or the attention it might require for you to heal that, for you to nurture the root of what's being activated, may be different. It may look different. It may require different things. You might not yet have the tools that you need in order to do the work, right? In order to start that process. And so it may require that, you know, it may take a little while. It may take a little while. And that is okay. I want to encourage you and say that is okay. I feel like that is something I learned on this journey, is that it doesn't always look the same. Our meditations don't always look the same. Our prayers don't always look and feel the same. The healing process may not always look and feel the same. For every situation, it may require a different version of you, and therefore your process towards it, your way of dealing with it, your way of addressing it may look different. It may require something different of you. But that's the human experience. That's the beauty of it, is that you don't need to get anything perfect. You don't need to get anything right, because there is more. Because there's levels to this. Because every situation is a new experience. And that version of you that handled it before, this is a whole new version of you. The awakening alone can make a huge impact on you. Therefore, this is a new version of you, a different version of you addressing the issue every single time. Because we have to keep in mind, or we should keep in mind, that there are other influences that we may not be aware of. We don't know all the parts and bits and pieces that got us here, but we're here. And so if we can just accept where we are in the moment and go from there, oh, baby, the magic, the flow, the possibilities are there. And with that in mind, let's talk about detachment, okay? Because I do feel like the practice of detachment also helps, okay? So the saying goes, the less attached we are, the less defensive and reactive we will be. The less attached we are, the less defensive and reactive we will be. I had to learn that trying to force things, holding things hostage, adding pressure to things, keeping things beyond their season was not healthy. It was not a reflection that I was kind. It was not a reflection that I'm not judgmental. It was not a reflection that I accept people as they are and that I am being open-minded. A lot of times, it was more of a reflection of my own fears. Reflections of me trying to keep up with stories and narratives I've created and expectations I now had. When I am attached to things, staying longer than I should, excusing behavior, adjusting my behavior in order to try to save the situation, I would just end up exhausted. But the moment I would then decide to let that thing go, let that relationship go, let that job go, let that situation go, let that thought go, let that expectation go, I would feel so free. It's like I let the air out of the balloon. You know how like you got the balloon, the end of the balloon ain't tied, and so like you're holding it, but at some point you're gonna have to either tie it up or open it. But when you open it, you let that air out, and it's just a relief. That is how I often would feel when I was holding on to things that was ready to be released, but I wasn't releasing it, right? I would then feel exhausted. So after accepting like, hey, this isn't working, this is hurting, this doesn't feel good, and telling myself and telling spirit finally, like, you know what? I'm gonna walk away. The minute I would say I'm gonna leave, the minute I would make the decision that I'm walking away, when I tell you I will feel this sense of release, the gift in it, okay? The gift in it. And I would experience this so many times to the point where I started to realize like detachment is a way for me. Detachment is a way for me. And I had a friend tell me like my friend would tell me like I never knew anyone who would be so happy while breaking up. And when she said it, I had to laugh because I didn't realize how joyful I really do be. I'd be hella happy. And that's a sign to me that there was pressure on me in that situation, that there was some attachment going on there. I would feel so like relieved and feeling at ease knowing that whatever part I was playing in the situation, whatever I was attempting to do, whatever responsibility I had allowed myself to take on, like it was officially over. And it felt fucking good to be free of it. It felt good to be free of it. And so in that feeling free, in that releasing of that energy, it just felt freeing because now there was newness, right? There was possibilities. Now I didn't know what was ahead, but I was excited because I wasn't enjoying what, in reality, I wasn't enjoying what was happening. I was convincing myself that I should stay. I was convincing myself of how I should behave. I was convincing myself that I should do more, but I wasn't happy there. I wasn't enjoying the journey. I was given the opportunity to start again, and it was an opportunity I had failed to give myself because I was attached to something within the situation. And at the time, right, clearly I didn't know that this was an attachment issue, right? Like hindsight is 2020. But in the process of those experiences, right, after like having several of them and learning through them and taking note of like, oh, this feels good, this doesn't feel good, or how was I showing up in that relationship? What did I notice that was causing friction, right? Like really taking inventory and paying attention and reflecting. I learned that sometimes I was actually not attached to the actual person or the actual thing, but I was attached to the stories. I was attached to the expectations, the roles or identities I was journeying in. Those were the attachments. It was never about the person. And so I realized like those are likely that the stories, the expectations, the identities, the future plans, right? Those are usually the things I needed to detach from, right? I needed to be okay with knowing that, you know what? These plans to spend the rest of my life with you and to build this life in this world together is no longer a possibility. And it's okay. Now I need to go out and find a new job, try something new, try something I never done before because what I was betting on, I'm not enjoying. And even in that moment, it's okay. It's okay that what I thought I wanted, I later realized is not what's best for me. I started to be okay and excited with the opportunity that I even got to try things out. Now I don't have to wonder if it would have worked. I don't have to wonder, could it have been us? I don't have to wonder if I would have enjoyed that type of work. I know. I had the experience. And even though no two experiences are ever the same, it's enough for me to experience it once and be like, I wasn't that interested. I'm going to try something else. Life is short. I learned to be able to see the situation, the circumstances, the stories I was telling myself, the expectations I have as something separate from me. I think that sometimes we create these stories and we create these connections and it starts being an identifying factor, right? I am a mother. I am an attorney. I am a wife. I am a homeowner, right? And so when we take away the everything that comes after the I am, that's where the fear might kick up. Because now we don't know who we are outside of that. Now we don't know what's going to replace that status. Now we don't know what our life looks out without that. And so it can be scary. I had to remind myself and practice and learn that I needed to know the truth of who I was, right? Like I needed to have security within myself. So even when the jobs change, the labels change, my relationships change, my roles change, that it doesn't change the truth of who I am. It doesn't change how I see myself. We're going to play so many roles in this lifetime. We're going to have so many experiences in this lifetime. Everything has its season and it's all good. And so as I practice detachment, right? Detachment from the stories, detachment from my expectations, detachment from identities, right? Like I started to recognize the importance of it. I started to recognize just how much power I was allowing those things to have over me and how that was impacting my life and impacting my experience. Because detachment doesn't mean we don't care. Detachment definitely does not mean I don't care. It simply means taking our subjective perspective out of the equation for the sake of finding a higher truth, for the sake of connecting with our truth, for the sake of not being distracted by these stories we created that was never meant, that was never facts. That was never truth. I always think it's interesting that this is a side note, but I always think it's interesting that, this is probably why I don't know how I feel about weddings. When they say to death do you part, right? Like I always cackle because I'm like, I know several married people, and I can witness their disappointment when their marriage or relationship isn't going how they expect it, and the disappointment they feel and the anger they feel when they feel like they may have to walk away, right? In those moments and in those spaces, right? Like they are angry because the stories and the belief they had about how their life should be is now being challenged, right? Is now being shook. But the reality is, like, I don't believe that anybody can promise you that they're going to be with you for the rest of their life. I do believe that it can be death do you part, but death in the sense of this version of me. If until this version of me dies, that's saying yes to you, I I will be with you. But the thing is, like, people are constantly changing and shifting and growing and expanding. And so, like, how can anybody promise someone that they're going to be with them? And so, like, if they change along the way and decide, like, hey, this actually isn't serving me anymore, why is that a negative thing? Should that be seen as a bad thing? Because in reality, like, if we're being honest with ourselves, a lot of us are going to grow apart from a lot of people in our lives. But yeah, I just always think it's interesting about the death do you part and the expectation that somebody can promise you that they will be with you for the rest of their living lives in the current body they have. I'm not saying it's not possible. I'm just saying the expectation of it and then being angry at the person for not being able to follow through is always very interesting to me, because I just think about our human experience, and I just think about our evolution, and I'm just like, it's very possible for someone to very well mean to be with you for the rest of their lives, but then get to a place where they recognize that the relationship isn't serving them, and that's not who they were, is not who they want to express as now, and giving themselves permission to walk away and to start anew, without feeling guilty or feeling like they're a bad person. So again, I'm not married, so and it's also why I just don't know what I believe about it, because that to me just doesn't make sense. I'm not saying that it's not possible, it just doesn't make sense. I feel like there's always this possibility that people will change, and that what helps them be the best version of themselves will change, and their desires and needs will change. And it doesn't make them a bad person because they're evolving. It just is what it is, right? So but that's my form of detachment, right? Like, even if someone promised that they will be with me for the rest of their lives, like, I won't hold them to it. And not because I don't care, but because I know that, like, it is what it is. What the fuck? Like, I just that is just a belief I have, and something I have journeyed with for a while, and something I constantly go back to every once in a while to see if my thoughts or my opinions about it changes, but it's been pretty consistent. So back to the main topic, right? So I realized that some of the stories I was attached to because of how I felt things should be, or how people should be, or this expectation of what my future was supposed to look like, and those things and my feelings about them was clouding my judgment, right? It was making the experience far more challenging than it had to be. So when emotions come up that reflect fear to me, right, when I'm like pulling at things, trying to control things, trying to make things stay, trying to beg for something to be something that is not, right? Like, when those fear like energy shows up in a way or another, I ask myself, what are you attempting to protect? What are you trying to save? Because when I ask myself that question, I can usually figure out what the true issue is here. It's likely not the surface level issue that I'm fighting or angry or mad about, but it's something deeper. Am I desiring love? Do I feel rejected? Do I feel like the person doesn't value me? Am I questioning my own worth? Do I feel like I'm a failure? Like, what is it I'm trying to protect? What am I trying to save? What is the perspective here? with the practice of acceptance comes perspective. Because a big part of accepting what is also the perspective you have about what is, the perspective you have about the situation. We see the world as we are. We perceive the world from our own unique lens and perspective, right? And so when we allow what is, we are deciding to have a perspective that does not conflict with the reality. We are choosing not to be in conflict. We are choosing not to fight against. We are choosing not to create friction. Brianna West says, it was never the world standing in your way, but your mind. It was never the world standing in your way, but your mind. And this is what I found to be true on my awakening journey, right? My thoughts help to create my reality, and therefore, what is standing in my way is not something outside of myself, but my inner world. I am the answer to the conflicts that I am experiencing, okay? Our perspective is our way of thinking about and understanding something. It is those thoughts and that thinking that are being accepted as our truth and driving and influencing our emotions. So what we say to ourselves matter, right? How we perceive the world matters. How we see things matter. I wanted to share some of the perspectives that I've adopted along the way that are still pretty active in my life. I will say that perspective shifts with me, right? Like they don't always stay the same. I do believe that I get what I need in every season. So sometimes something that serves me in one season may not serve me in another. But these are some perspectives that I'm currently journeying with, and that helps me to accept that life does consist of a continuous processing of learning, unlearning, and relearning. When you awaken, it becomes easier to accept that you can be wrong about many things, and it doesn't matter because you become humble enough to accept it's a continuous process of learning, unlearning, and relearning, a continuous process. And so here are some of the perspectives I have that I feel like supports that idea of this continuous process of learning, unlearning, and relearning. So the first thing I want to talk about is life is happening for you, not to you. Okay, that is a perspective I journey with. I truly do believe that life is happening for me, not to me, right? Because nothing is ever wasted. That is a motto I live by. That is a motto I journey with. I believe that everything matters. Every experience has a purpose, and I trust that life is happening to assist me in my role in the bigger picture. I believe that every human being has a role in the collective mission, right? And that this collective mission is going on for years and years and years, right? But our current incarnation, our reason why we're here on earth is to play a part, right? We have a message that we need to deliver to the earth. And so our experience is important to the collective. It matters. I trust that no moment is wasted. I trust that everything that happens has a purpose. And even when I can't see it and understand it in the moment, I can walk in faith. I can accept it through faith. I believe that life is constantly preparing us for roles we may not even be considering. I think that all of this is lessons and classroom knowledge and all of the beautiful and wonderful things. And life is constantly teaching us, and it's constantly preparing us. I don't remember when I realized it, but I remember I got to a place in my 20s where I was like, I have everything I need in me. I have been through enough life experiences to truly believe that I had everything I needed in me, that it just took the right moment, the correct circumstances to awaken it. And so I feel like that's what life does. Life helps guide us to those moments. Life helps us connect with what it is we need in this lifetime, to remember our truth, to develop into who we're called to be on our mission, to live in our purpose, to awaken in our purpose. Life helps us with that. And that's why even when things happen that we weren't planning to happen, or even when things happen that we think is horrible, for me, I find peace there, because I'm like, I don't know why this is happening. This is not exciting. But what I do know is that so far in my life, everything has mattered. Nothing was ever wasted. So I can be excited and curious in expectancy, even when I'm just like, this is scary as shit. But you know what? I'm gonna be with what is, because I don't know where this is going. But what I do know is that life is happening for me. Life wants me to succeed. Source wants me to succeed. Source wants to support me in my purpose. Life is not out to get me. So I don't have to look at it like something is coming to get me. No. At least not me, right? I think that all of us may have our own feelings about life in this world, and we may be very well true in it. But if you are somebody who feel like there is an inkling of possibility that life is happening for you, I really want to encourage you to adopt the motto and just journey with it and see what it awakens for you. See what kind of experiences it leads you to. Because when I tell you, it is pure fucking magic. It is pure magic to shift your perspective and watch life show up for you. Be open to life and watch how life responds. So by believing that everything is happening for me, I can get in an unexpected situation with excitement and curiosity, wondering where it may possibly lead. Because I know it's always for my good. Regardless of what it may look like, I know that it is here to support me and love on me and help me to experience all the amazing versions and aspects of my being. I'm here for a good time. That is something I am not going to stop believing. I am here for a good time. I feel it in my body that I'm just here to enjoy life. And in that, like, it's enough. I'm literally here to enjoy life. Like, I don't know how else to put it, but like, that is really my belief. And so life is happening for me. Hello, show up. Yeah, that's what it is. So this other perspective I have, which has been a game changer. Because I'm like, why see things as failing when you can just see it as data? When you can see it as research, where you can see it as information, perspective. Why does it have to be failing? Why? So I have a 3-line in my human design profile, right? Which the 3 is all about a person who has a personality of learning through trial and error, right? So they learn through their lived experiences. And so I am definitely that person. And I am a person who is constantly experimenting with life, seeing if I resonate with something, right? Trying things out, seeing if someone belief actually resonates with me, right? If I can see it showing up in my life. I like to take in information and people perspectives and people recommendations and test them out to see if they work for me. Like, I'm not a person who's gonna blindly, at this time in my life, blindly just accept what somebody telling me as truth, right? Like, it may very well be true, but is it truth for me? And so I'm really always encouraged to experiment, to try things out, to test it out, to see what resonates for me. And that's something I encourage a lot of people. But that's because I have a 1-3 profile, right? And therefore I have that 3 energy that's all about trial and error. It's all about living life. It's all about seeing your life experiences not as failing or succeeding, but seeing it as data, as information for you to use and better your life, for you to use that information and that data to expand your experience, to have more fun, to have more joy, to get to know yourself on a deeper level, or to even change and shift your perspective of the world. Clearly, my line 3 also helps me with awakening, right? Because it helps me be fearless, right? Like, I am courageous in how I approach life. Like, I will try. Like, I don't care how scary it is. I don't care if there's a possibility of failure. Like, there's so many things in my life that I just tried. Even when I wasn't supported, I will still try. I will give life a go, and I will take whatever I learn from it to either share it with others or use it for myself later on. And even with that, I will say that nothing has ever been wasted. Like, there's things I would say that I felt like I had failed at, but I had to remind myself, like, girl, you didn't fail. Like, look at all the information you learned. Look at everything you've gathered. Look at what you learned about yourself. Look at what now you know. Like, now you are way more trusting of your knowing. Now you trust that what you believe is the truth, right? Like, one of the things I believe is that, like, there's no one size fits all. Like, as much as people want to package up these what you need to do, what you should do, the reality is, like, everyone will need to do something different. Not every process is going to work for every person. And so it's up to us to figure out what our process is, what actually works for us. And so that may mean using someone else's process as a structure, but adjusting it to what your needs are, adjusting it to what works best for you, but just using it as a possibility, but not actually feeling like this has to work for me, because it might not. But it's about being okay with the idea that something may not work out, and that as I am doing this, as I am journeying with this, as I am engaging with it, allowing yourself to see it as an experiment as opposed to this has to work. There were times in my life where I felt afraid to do things because I didn't want anyone to witness me failing. I feel like law school, my decision to go to law school was one of those moments. I was more afraid of people saying, I told you so, than anything else. And so years went by before I realized that that was really the true fear. The true fear was this idea of failing in front of people seeing that what I was going for didn't work out the way I planned. I was so focused on other people's perspective of what was happening. I was so caught up on what other people would think. And when I think about it now, I kind of giggle because I actually do check in with myself very often and just be asking myself, like, are we focused on what they think? What do you think? Right? Like, anytime I start thinking about, like, what people are going to say, what are they going to think? I wonder what they thought. I'm like, what do you think? What are you thinking? How are you feeling about you? Let's start there, right? Like, let's check in with you first. How are you feeling? Right, like, but these are some things I noticed and I learned along the way, and that helped me to kind of shift my perspective from always about everybody else and external validation and external acceptance and making things look good, to realizing that I don't give a damn how it looks. How does it feel for me? How does it look for me? Like, am I satisfied with it? Not satisfied, but no, I feel successful. Do I feel good about what's happening? Do I feel good about the journey? Forget what everybody else is thinking and feeling. What about me? You know, I had to start asking myself, like, how do you feel though? Because I know for sure I was focused on the way things looked from the outside looking in. And I know that that perspective was limiting my experience. Because instead of just living life, instead of just giving life a go, instead of just trying things out, and instead of just giving myself an opportunity to explore, I was trying to manage everything so that it still looked good. Or feeling like if something failed, then I need to hide. But why? Like, I think about it now and I have to cackle because I'm like, girl, how are you supposed to learn? How are you supposed to know if you don't try? How are you supposed to know if you don't have the experience? How are you supposed to know if you don't put yourself out there and get some feedback? How are you supposed to know? And I started to realize too that though things may look like failing at first glance, the reality was, like, that is the way I build my foundation. I do trial and error. I have to figure things out. I have to see what works because I'm a person who really does like structure. I'm a person who likes systems. I'm a person who needs systems in order to be efficient, in order to use my energy and show up in ways that are quality, you know? And so there may not be a structure or creation already in place that I can just take and utilize, right? Like, I have to do the work to create something that is correct for me. And so that may take time, you know? I think that even working on this YouTube, even working on a podcast, right? I've had podcasts before, but this feels like a whole new experience. But it was those things I learned in the past that I am now utilizing here, right? And allowing myself to let this be an experiment so I can continue to grow, learn, be encouraged, be inspired, and feel successful. Project a life. Tap it up. Tap it up. Right? So even those moments matter. And they weren't failing moments. They were moments of research. They were moments of experimenting. They were moments of me figuring it out, figuring myself out. Who am I as a podcaster, right? Like, there's so many people podcasting. There's so many people on YouTube, right? But we know that in authenticity is the way. So how do I quiet out the noise around me and just tap in with myself? How do I not get so caught up on all the rules already out there that I can create my own process, create my own way, create my own path? And though it may look like failing to people, it may look like a slow process or progress, but at the end of the day, like, you got to figure out what it is you need. And so me seeing quote unquote failures as data instead of seeing it as failing and in a negative way, I started to just see it as neutral. Like, this is part of the process. This is the journey to success. This is the path. And it's an exciting one. Like, honestly, like, I am enjoying the journey of life because I no longer feel like I have to be perfect. I don't need to get anything right. I can say the wrong word. I can forget words. I can say and not drive myself crazy feeling like that I'm not good enough, or thinking that because I'm different or I'm not so polished, right? Like, thinking about like the expectation of the aesthetics. And I'm not saying that this is true, but I'm just saying, like, I'm not so caught up in my head anymore. I'm allowing myself to learn on a journey, to not feel like I have to be at a final destination. And so I really do want to encourage everyone out there who's listening, like, allow your failures to be, your quote unquote failures to be teachers. Allow them to be data. See them as research. See them as information to support you and guide you along your journey. It's not wasted information. I promise you that. People whose businesses don't work out, a lot of them don't stop trying to create businesses. They just learn from what they experienced. Okay? Hello? Yeah. And so with that, like, it was important for me to learn to trust the process, to accept the unfolding of life, and not worry about others' expectations of what it looks like or how it should look, or even get caught up in my expectations of how the process should look, what it should be like, and feeling like if my reality don't match my expectations, that something is automatically wrong. Because there's actually so much that is influencing the outcome that we don't know about, that we aren't aware about. So you can't automatically say that you are wrong or you messed up or you failed. Like, there's so much we don't know. But if we just accept what is, we can allow life to unfold in the way it's going to unfold. And instead of seeing things as failure, because you're right, you can also see things as failure and also as a lesson. That's cool too. My point here is just my prayer here and my hope here is for us to not see failure as a reason to stop, or as a reason to stop trying, or as a negative thing, or allowing other people to shame us because there was a perceived failure. No, I want to encourage us to keep going. I want to encourage us to try again. I wanted to encourage us to learn from that experience and keep it moving. I want to encourage us to laugh about it. Like, hello? And so, like, this is just one of those perspectives that I really journey with. And I feel like it has really changed the way I experience life. And it has changed my experiences. And it has opened up so much space for me to blossom and bloom and allow other things to grow where there is space. Yeah. So for me, I learned to simply trust the unfolding and do my part. That's all I can do is do my part, right? And because the reality is, how will we learn without space to get it wrong? How will we learn without the space to get it wrong? Without space to experiment and keep experimenting? Space to miss the purpose, to lose sight of the details, to learn, to grow, to develop humility, okay? How will we know if we're not living and trying and showing up and putting ourselves out there and being vulnerable, to remember that life doesn't always look and feel like a linear process? I had to give myself permission to be okay with not completing successfully on the first try. Allow myself to experiment and discover freely. Allow myself to meet my goals in unexpected ways. And I pray you consider giving yourself that freedom. I pray that you consider giving yourself that opportunity. I pray that you consider shifting your perspective and looking at the idea of failure or being wrong or messing up in a new light, We don't have to judge things as good or bad. It can just be. Failing or discovering what does not work is proof that we're making some movement, right? And that's exciting in my opinion, right? So many people are alive and not living. I definitely was one of those people that was just living from a space of survival. I didn't want to do too much. I didn't want to risk too much. I just kept going, doing what I believed was expected, doing what I was told would make me successful. And then I recognized that people's idea of success and my idea of success is not the same. And so I was back to the drawing board. And though people may not see it as failure, I wonder sometimes if I did. I think I did, especially when it came to jobs. When things didn't go like I expected them, I would be so down on myself. I was so attached to these visions and these ideas of how my life had to look. And then when I got it and realized it wasn't what I wanted, I was devastated, you know? And so, like, a lot of these practices and a lot of these perspectives come from those experiences, that recognizing that there's so much more to life, that recognizing that the stories we told ourselves or the way we've been conditioned don't always support us in the way that we would hope it would. But to know that that's okay. To know that everybody did the best they could, but that now is our opportunity and our role or responsibility, if we may, to do something with what we know now. Recognizing that this is an awakening journey, and in this awakening journey, things will be revealed to me along the way. And so I can be at peace knowing that there's so much more. I can be at peace with knowing that as long as I'm alive, as long as I have breath, there is choices for me to make. There's opportunities that I can say yes to. And there's moments where I get to create my reality, a new reality with my awareness now. I think if we shift our idea of failing to it being an opportunity for guidance, feedback, data, right? Maybe then we will give more things a try and experience life a bit more. When we try something new, say yes to an experience, we allow space for discovery and remembrance of self and truth. I pray that we don't be afraid to live. I pray that we don't be afraid to fall short. I pray that we give life a go, that we give it a try, and that we keep trying and keep showing up and keep at it. Because it doesn't have to be seen as failure, because reality is, it is data. It is information. It is something you probably didn't know before that specifically relates to you. And so it has purpose. Now, what that purpose is, we may not know. And we may never know in this lifetime. But we can remember that it's for our highest good. Always and always. So, I was reading this book by Rick Rubin, and Rick Rubin says anything that allows the audience to access how you see the world is accurate, even if the information is wrong. And when I read that, and I feel like it's still processing for me, but when I read it, I was like, yes. This is such a cool perspective. I really, really appreciated that perspective, and I feel like I'm still journeying with it. This perspective has helped me to not get caught up in being right or being perfect. I allow myself to share what I know and believe, knowing that I may not have all the information. I may be missing information. And so what I am saying may be incomplete. And in some cases, it may be downright wrong. But it is an expression of myself in that moment. And it is a true expression of myself in that moment. And so I feel I have learned to be okay with the possibility that I might be wrong, right? Like, I've learned to be okay with the possibility that I may not have all the information. I mentioned earlier, like, this awakening journey has really shown me that there's so much I'm not aware of, right? Like, I didn't know there was a spiritual community. I didn't know that there was this spiritual community where people do tarot and oracle and they accept their gifts and all these beautiful things, and they talk about the occult and all these beautiful and amazing and eye-opening things. And like, when I realized it exists, I realized another world existed. And as someone who was raised in a household where people were afraid of voodoo, you know, being a part of this world and seeing this world helped me to let go of some of my fears that I had inherited. And so it's just been a beautiful journey and a constant reminder that I don't know everything. And that there are worlds and experiences out there that I know nothing about. And just because I know nothing about it don't mean it's not real, doesn't mean it doesn't exist, and doesn't mean it's not true. It was just not in my awareness. I didn't even know it existed. And that's why I think it's so, like, life is so exciting to me and so beautiful, and I'm easily excited about life, because when I realized that there was so much I did not know, it freed me. It freed me. And when I think about the idea that anything that allows the audience to access how you see the world is accurate, even if the information is wrong, then I am just at peace with being who I am in the moment and allowing that to be expressed, and knowing that it may not be correct, right? Everything I'm saying may not be correct, that I may be missing some points, but allowing myself to still express, and knowing that if I get more information, then my perspective may change, my thoughts may change, how I see the situation may change, but nonetheless, in this moment, this is my truth. And that's why I believe that my truth is my truth at the moment, because the reality is, like, I don't know everything. And there may be things after I said this in another video, even after I record sometimes, like, there are more information comes to me once I turn the recorder off. But I have to accept that, like, Charlie, that is only a brief expression of you. That is only a brief reflection of your expression. There's so much more to you. And so I give myself permission to be okay with, like, this is just a brief expression of me. And therefore, like, even if I fall short, even if I mess something up, even if I said something incorrectly, I don't have to feel like it goes to my worthiness or goes to whether or not I deserve to have a platform, right? Or I deserve to have a podcast, or I should have a podcast. Like, nah, to all of that. This is happening. This is happening. And I want people to see the highs and the lows. And I pray that the highs and the lows and me expressing my truth and me being authentic inspire other people to show the fuck up. Show up. Do the best you can. Show up in every moment, giving it your best shot. Allow yourself the space to grow in front of an audience, if that feels good for you. And be okay with knowing that, like, you're going to evolve over time. Your expression is going to change. What you believe is going to change. And it doesn't have to have a negative connotation to it. It's actually pretty exciting, in my opinion, of course. And so with that, I do want to encourage anyone out there who's listening, and even to myself, to practice just showing up. Just keep showing up. Just show up. And adopt a perspective that supports you and living your truth and being unapologetic in how you express. And now this practicing can take time, right? Being okay with the idea that you might be wrong, being okay with the idea that someone may call you out, right? I think all of that is us being vulnerable, you know, being willing to put ourselves out there in any capacity can always result in us being rejected, or our ideas being rejected, or our ideas being questioned, or us, like, feeling like we're backed in a corner. Like, anything can happen, but I pray that we accept what is, and in that accepting what is, that even when we speak up and other people don't agree, that we can still be at peace with knowing that our truth is our truth. And I think that this practice can take time, right? Like, because this is just me, but I really do believe in the importance of finding encouraging and loving spaces to practice accepting yourself in, to practice speaking up in, to practice being comfortable, being vulnerable. And when I say vulnerable, I just mean, like, speaking up your truth, sharing your opinion, sharing your thoughts, right? That people may not agree with, but being okay even if they don't agree. Knowing that all is well, even if they don't agree. Knowing that their disagreements doesn't change who you are at your core. And if what they say you agree with, then hey, that was an opportunity. Had you not said anything, had you not said anything, you would not have heard about their perspective, and therefore you would not have been able to shift yours to one that feels more in resonance. Okay? It's an opportunity. It's an opportunity. And so I really do believe in finding encouraging and loving spaces to practice this in, practice showing up, practice being your most authentic self, practice expressing, practice speaking more. Whatever it is that you want to do, that you allow yourself a space to show up that way in. And if it helps, find an environment, find a community where you feel loved and supported, where you can start practicing at if you're not ready to share with strangers or with the world at whole. Or maybe vice versa, right? You may be more comfortable sharing with strangers than you are with people that know you, right? I get that it can be challenging to be okay or at peace with possibly being wrong when you think you'll be disrespected or berated for being wrong. But anybody who is unkind to you in response to you being you says a lot more about them and what they got going on than it does about you. And I do want to say, take heed, because those messages be loud. And so I want to encourage people to practice certain habits and strengthen your muscles in spaces where you truly feel seen, safe, and loved, right? Depending on your personality and your needs, like find spaces where you can just be you. Allow yourself to just live out loud. Allow yourself to explore what feels good for you. If there's certain clothes you want to wear that you've been hesitant to wear because you think that people will judge you, try it out. Find spaces that are more aligned with what it is you desire to express and live. Be your authentic self and let the people who will adore and love and respect and cherish you for that truth show up. Free yourself. Free yourself. Okay? Free yourself. All right, so another perspective, because I talked about this under acceptance, right? The whole idea of like I was too focused on what people thought of me, and so a perspective I had was like I stopped thinking about what people thought of me and started thinking about what I thought of myself. Okay, so with that, one of the things the perspective I adopted was stop worrying about what people think of you. Stop putting so much value in what these folks think of you. And there are so many reasons why we should do that. I think the main thing is like what people think of you is literally none of your business. None of your business. Okay? Those are their thoughts. They are theirs. That's for them to deal with, for them to journey with, for them to figure out. Right? So wherever those thoughts come from, it's internally within them. So that is their business, their things to deal with. I had to learn to focus on me, right? And what I thought of me. People perception of us is their perception, right? And there is nothing we can do to control that. We can try to act different, be different, but people are going to see us the way they see us. And it's all good. Let it be what it's going to be. Right? But you do have influence of what you think of you. What you think of you matters, right? Because what you think of you will influence how you show up. It will influence what opportunities you give yourself. It will influence what you believe you are deserving of. It will influence what you accept. It would influence how you treat yourself. So my theory is like, instead of worrying about what people think of you, it's best for us to self-reflect and grow in love with ourselves, to do the inner work, to deal with our inner worlds, okay? I really had to explore my thoughts and my beliefs, right? Became more curious about myself, why I think the way I think, why I say what I'm saying, and why I do certain things, right? I started to really question myself to see where a lot of this stemmed from, right? What my actions and my expressions were truly rooted in, what my beliefs were rooted in. I started to pay attention to what I enjoyed and why I enjoyed it, right? There was a lot of habits I had just because like it was in my environment growing up. But when I got older, I realized like I'm not that person. I actually don't really enjoy that. Like heels, I'm so happy I gave myself permission not to wear certain heels because they aren't comfortable for me. Why am I doing that? But it was expected, like it was expected, and I allowed myself to be pressured into that expectation. But the more I started spending time with myself, the more I got to know myself, the more I stopped doing things just because it was expected, and I started just doing me. If it looks weird, let it look weird. If I stood out, let me stand out. But it was more of a true reflection of me when I started to really show up in my own truth, right? As opposed to what was expected, what the rules were, what the culture was. I see the awakening journey as a journey back home to self. I see it as a journey of remembrance. And I feel like the more I started to question myself, right, the more I stopped focusing so much on what other people thought of me, I felt like the more connected I was with my own truth, the more at peace I felt and the more secure I felt. Because I didn't have to wonder anymore about what they would think, what they would say, what they would do. Because it didn't matter. What mattered was how I was going to feel. What mattered was that I felt like I was being honest with myself. And in being honest with myself, even when others didn't agree, I can at least say, but I was being authentic to me. And it could be that they just don't like, they just don't like the aspect of me, or they don't agree with the aspects of me. But that doesn't change that I'm still going to be me. I feel like the more we know ourselves, the less likely others can tell us who we are or shake our foundation by not agreeing with us or not approving of our behavior or telling us that, the gifts we have, we don't have, or that we're not worthy of being in the positions we in, right? When we know ourselves, when we feel truly connected and secure in who we are, who we say we are, while we're here on this earth, when other people have an opinion, it's just that, an opinion. We're not taking it in as facts. We're not trying to make it our reality. We can hear people's opinion and say, okay, and be unfazed by it. But I feel like that's what happens when you have a secure foundation with self. That's what happens when you know self, right? When you become connected with self, when you grow in love with self, when you accept yourself and your humanity. You have this unshakable confidence and this unshakable knowing of the fact that you are flawed as a human, right? But at the same time, you're perfectly imperfect. And that you're already whole, you're already enough, and that regardless of how you decide to express in a moment, it doesn't take away from the truth of who you are. I think when we know ourselves, right, and we have this unshakable foundation, we can stand 10 toes down on what we say and how we show up while still allowing ourselves to pivot whenever we feel like it. We don't have to imprison ourselves, right? And we don't allow other people to imprison us into expectations of how we should behave, into ideologies that we outgrow. Like, those moments where like you're like, oh, I'm not gonna drink today, right? Today Friday, you're not gonna drink, and then like 2 months later you're drinking and your friend is like, oh, I thought you wasn't drinking. And wasn't okay, and now I am, right? Like, it's like really allowing yourself, like you create the space to just be, to allow yourself to explore, to allow yourself to just do you. That's another thing. I stopped that whole like I'm never. Listen, I don't know. This version of me right now may not want to drink. This version of me might not want to eat meat. But I don't know what 5 months from now I'm gonna look like. I don't know what tomorrow version of me gonna want to do, right? And like clearly I'm not gonna just like randomly just decide, like if I commit to something and then the next day I don't want to commit anymore, right? I'm gonna explore why I don't want to commit. But the reality is I get to change my mind, right? And we all do. And so like we don't need to be getting caught up on how it's gonna look from the outside looking in. Do you live your life? Listen, don't let people live their life and yours. And half these people don't even want to live their lives because it requires us to be responsible. It requires us to be able to be like, this is the part I play in the circumstance I am in. And it's way easier for some people to blame the outside world when in reality, like, you are your problem and your solution. But we allow outside things to control us and to tell us how we have to be and tell us how we need to be. And it's not truly our fault, right? Because I think that that's what at least in the US and at least where I grew up, that's what our conditioning does. It tells us to be appropriate. It tells us to seek approval. It tells us to be acceptable to those outside of us. It teaches us how to behave, to be approved of, or to be successful, or to be enough. It tells us the conditions that we have to feel in order to be allowed in the community, accepted in the community, supported in the community, loved in the community. So it makes sense that, you know, a lot of us are still experiencing that until we awaken to the idea like, hey, I've been hella programmed. Do I like this programming? We'll continue to play out that programming. But when you awaken and you recognize like, hey, this is a lot of programming, right? You allow yourself that space to then like learn, unlearn, and relearn. Because now you have awareness of what's happening, and now you can do something about it. With awareness comes opportunity. So yeah. Yeah. I learned that I don't need to be perfect, right? Like, I just need to be honest. I just need to be authentic. I just need to give myself space to be, to explore, to awaken, to be activated, to remember. We don't need to be perfect. As long as how we're showing up, how we're expressing is a reflection of us, the version of us we're wanting to express, that can simply be enough, right? Like, remember, we are more than our expression in this moment. So much more. So I had to remember that this or any other moment is not the defining one, right? Like, it can't hold all that I am, right? So if I know that this can't hold all of what I am, and this is just an expression, this is just a snippet, this is just a piece, then I'm not trying to defend it, or I'm not trying to make it so perfect, or I'm not trying to present it as such, right? I'm presenting this as this is a reflection of my inner world at this moment. Boom. There you go, right? I think about that too as I look at posts online, right? Like when I read posts and some parts of it, I'm like, that's a little for me. And the reality is, right, I think that if people had more time and had more characters, they would say a whole lot more than what they're saying. So sometimes we just get a little small glimpse into their minds, a very small glimpse. So I try to keep that in perspective. I try to keep that in mind too. So yeah, I pray that you try not to allow any moment to be the determining factor of who you are and your worth. I pray that you be kind to yourself on this journey, that you allow yourself space to be. May you not be hard on yourself. And just an FYI, in my experience, okay, people will like you and be kind to you when they are in good spirits with you, right? And then when you do something that hurts them, they may condemn you and say some horrible things about you as a person. May you not take things too personal. People's deliveries and what they say are reflections of their inner world. Is a reflection of their perspective, how they perceive things, right? So I pray that you are mindful of that. Don't lose your footing in your world or truth. And that's why I think like one of my biggest perspectives is like, I can't care what people say because there's too much that I can't control. And not only that, there's too many influences that I don't know. Because even when people say, this is why I feel this way, there's so much to unpack there. So, like, I mean, that's just me, though. That's just me. This is something I learned on my journey. This is something I witnessed on my journey, and that I believe is true so far, is that I can't get so caught up on what people think of me. I just can't. And this is not to say that people's opinions and thoughts don't have some gems and values in it. I think I personally say this all the time. I don't need a specific person, but I do need people. And I do value people's wisdom and their intuition and their guidance because I do have blind spots. And so I do believe that, you know, people have value to offer. From my soul remembrance to you, please do not allow a moment to determine your worth. Please do not sum yourself up into a moment, a decision, or even an experience. You are so, so, so much more. And I mean, to be honest, right, it is really hard for me to bet so much on a moment because I have seen how quick life can change, right? How quick things can shift, how quick life can show you how good it can get, and how much more there is to explore. Life happens. And being stern about it is not as helpful as one might think, right? Being hard about life, taking life so serious, taking yourself so serious, it's not as helpful as you would think. It actually does limit your experience even more. But may we celebrate that there is always space to grow. There's always a possibility. As long as we have breath, there's always possibility. And listen, honestly, another perspective is like to get anything wrong is an opportunity. Okay? Listen, you don't know what you don't know until you realize you didn't know it. You don't know what you don't know until you realize you didn't know it. This was my motto in law school. I think I probably got it from a professor, or we used to always say it like, you don't know what you don't know. Or maybe it was the military. Either way, we don't know what we don't know, right? So by living, experiencing, reading, learning, engaging in conversations, all of the things, right? It allows us to learn, to discover, to integrate, to be curious, to shift our perspective. Listen, right? May you not allow yourself to be engulfed with shame for being wrong, okay? How else are you going to learn if you don't put yourself out there? I already said this earlier, but I'm going to repeat it. How else are you going to learn if you don't put yourself out there? Okay? Put yourself out there. Vulnerability requires courage, and you got it. Okay? So, to get anything wrong is truly an opportunity, and I'm going to stand on that. And so I feel like this other perspective that I have is like such, I think it like, let me just say it and you tell me what you think. All right. Let me share this other perspective that I've adopted and you can let me know what y'all think. Okay. So my perspective is that I am human and so is every other human. Period, point blank. I am human and so is every other human, right? So with that, I am kind to myself and I try to be kind to everyone around me, right? Sometimes I may be a little dependent on the circumstances, but generally, right, I try to be a very compassionate, empathetic, and kind person because I have learned that the same suffering and the same experiences I have had, many people have had them as well, right? Trauma, many people are walking around with a lot of trauma, a lot of circumstances, a lot of situations, a lot of worries, whether we know about them or not. You know, just because people have wealth and in a monetary sense or have accumulated a lot of worldly things does not mean that they're not having a human experience, does not mean that they are not still experiencing suffering, does not mean that they're not experiencing trauma and harm and heartbreak and loss. You know, it just looks different. And so one of the perspective I have is that I am human and so is every other human. And so I think it can be challenging for us to have compassion for ourselves, to be gentle with ourselves, to change some of the beliefs we have about ourselves that we adopted from others along the way, right? When you remember your humanity and remember that every human is in the same boat as you, that we all are heading in the same direction, whether we believe it's to death, right? To ego death, or to back home to self, or back home to source, whatever it is, right? Whatever we believe that journey is, like we're all heading to the same place, taking different paths, but we're all heading there. And so no one is better than you, and you're not better than anyone either. I think that when we accept that reality that we're all heading to the same place, probably more than likely we could say we're taking different paths, right? That no one is better than you, that you're not better than anyone else, then maybe the idea of like being right or being perfect or saving face, you know, can stop being as important. Because we recognize, even in our own selves, like, hey, I'm on a journey, I'm living, I'm learning, I'm growing, I'm developing. And so is she, so is he, so are they. We start to realize how much more we actually have in common. And though it may look different, it doesn't change that at the core of it all, we are all having a human experience. And so, right, you can mispronounce a name and laugh about it. You can be asked history questions that seem obvious, get it wrong and laugh about it. Or feel embarrassed, name that, hey, I'm embarrassed right now, and keep going. Then we can stop judging our experiences as right or wrong or acceptable or not acceptable and just let it be what it is. Allow it to usher us into newness. Allow it to be a catalyst for growth. Allow it to be a catalyst for connection. Allow it to be a catalyst for remembrance. We can stop trying to always have it together and just be. We can allow ourselves to explore and play with life, to stop taking life so serious. Like, there is a way to be very intentional and value life, and at the same time allow it to be fun, allow it to be joy filled, allow it to be a space where you learn and develop and grow knowingly and openly, where we're not in our head but being guided by our body's intelligence and the energy around us, where we're not trying to get it perfect, we're not trying to get it right, we're not trying to make sure we're following all those man-made rules, but we also remember that there is intelligence in our body, there is guidance in our body, and that too does matter. And like, how do we connect back with that and allow that to guide us, allow that to be a important part of our journey? And knowing that, right, like, when we are being guided by our body's intelligence, when we're being guided by intuition, it may not make logical sense, and it may not turn out the way people expect it, and all of that is okay. That is the human experience. That is part of the human experience. That is part of what is possible. We get to choose that, though. We can choose to be programmed and to allow that programming to dictate our lives, or we can choose to have a little balance, to play with life a bit, to play with energy a bit, to brainwash ourselves and stop letting other people brainwash us, to be intentional about what we digest. I feel like when we allow ourselves to be, we often give permission for other people to be as well, right? When we accept our humanity, when we accept that we are flawed, when we accept that we are not perfect, when we accept that we are always in progress, that we are on this remembrance journey, that we are going home to self, then as we give ourselves that permission, that freedom, we also give it to our brothers and sisters in humanity. We also encourage it in them. That's why when I say that I am the self-proclaimed ambassador of shamelessly embracing my truth, that is because I'm giving myself that permission, right? And therefore, I will fight and advocate and encourage others to do the same. We all have our mission or our message to share with the world, and mine is to be authentic, to be okay with not being perfect, to be okay with looking quirky to others, looking weird to others judging you, because they will. And so what? That doesn't make them right, and it doesn't make it true. And even if that was their perspective, there's so many other perspectives from that same action that you just did. We all may see it differently. So which one of them will you go with? If all of us are seeing your actions and we all have a perspective about it and none of our perspectives are the same, which perspective would you choose? Because honestly, once you start giving your permission to other people for them to tell you what's right, what's okay, what's not right, then you give them that opportunity to dictate to you what is acceptable for you. As humans, we are all having a human experience. No one is better than you, and you're not better than anyone else. And so in this knowing and in this remembrance, you can allow yourself and those around you to simply be, to explore their humanity freely, for you to explore your humanity freely, to express the version of the divine within us without us needing to tell them that they're wrong, or without us needing to dictate to people what it needs to look like. Let God shine through. Let God shine through them. Allow God to shine through you. One of the things about me is that when I am resisting something in another person, I always ask myself, where am I resisting within myself? If I'm looking at someone's actions and behaviors and I'm just like, why they doing that? Da-da-da, or any other when I used to like really be on that, like, oh, they too loud, oh, they this, oh, they that, I would ask myself, where are you not free? Because you're trying to dictate how they have to behave. Why? How do you know that's correct for them? So where are you not free? Why does that make you uncomfortable? You know, I started to question myself, and eventually I started to realize that, like, there are parts of my life where I hold myself back from expressing, or I hold myself back from being free because of how others looked at me, right? Like, I didn't want to be looked at a certain way. And so I started to give myself, right? That's what awareness does for you, right? That's what awakening does. It helps you to see how much of your thoughts and your beliefs and your perceptions of people are just your projections. They're more about you than they are about the actual person. They can tell you so much about yourself than the actual person. And that's why we can mirror each other for each other. But yeah, when I realize that a lot of times where I'm rejecting someone's way of expression is because I do it to myself. I tell myself what's not acceptable. And though that may not be correct for me, that doesn't mean it's not correct for them. You know, I may not be comfortable doing that, and that's okay. But that doesn't mean I get to stop someone else from doing it. That doesn't mean that I need to resist someone else from doing it. Let them do them, and I do me, because I don't want anybody trying to stop my flow. Okay? So like those are the kind of things that would come up for me, and those are the kind of things that helped me realize like I am having a human experience, right? And being kind to myself and being empathetic, I can recognize that you are also having a human experience, right? And I want to support you in your human experience. And I can do that first by being kind, loving, and allowing myself to be, and in turn also reflect that out externally. I dealt with myself first. Internal work. I too am having a human experience, and this is what it looks like. I pray that those perspectives can water something in you. And as we're wrapping up here, I have these messages I wanted to share before we head out. The first message we have is, I'm not sure if the Dalai Lama said this or the Archbishop, but either way, it's from the Book of Joy. And what was said is that any possibility of joy requires an acceptance of reality. Meditation is a practice that allows us to accept our life moment by moment without judgment or the expectation for life to be other than what it is. Now, the Book of Joy talks a lot about accepting what is and about mental immunity, and I definitely do recommend it. It took me a while to read it, but there's just a lot of gems in that you can just not only intake the information, but you can go out into the world and see how it shows up. And I think that that's pretty cool. But either way, right, any possibility of joy requires an acceptance of reality. And I will also say any possibility of flow, the state of flow, requires an acceptance of reality as it is, as it is, as it is. Okay. The next one is from Hood Healer, and I got this off her Twitter. It says, I can talk about my lower self with no shame because I'm not that person anymore. I can talk about my lower self with no shame because I'm not that person anymore. Period. Period. Okay. And if you do feel shame, I want to tell you that that's okay. Okay. Talk kindly to yourself. Be gentle with yourself. Nurture that part of yourself. Remind him, her, they that they did what needed to be done. Okay. In that moment, in that space. Right. And with time, you'll experience that energy of shame subside as you practice acceptance and experience peace, flow, and ease, because you're not at peace with what was. Because let's wake it up. Let's wake it up. Okay. If you are feeling shame, then you're likely not at peace with what was. Okay. And so now it's a practice of accepting what was. And know that you made it. Okay. You made it and did what needed to be done because you're here now. Okay. You're here now, and everything has a purpose. Everything has a purpose, even our season. So just because you were that person or you did that thing, that does not have to be you forever. Okay. That can be the version of you needed in that season. So please, please be kind to yourself. Please be gentle with yourself. Please do the inner work to nurture yourself and remind yourself that you did the best you could in that season. Okay? May you be kind to yourself. May you be kind to yourself. The next message is from me. So the next message is from me, and it says, reality is a life is messy. Okay, the journey is unknown, and all we can do is our best in each moment. And each time our best may look different. I pray that you allow yourself space to be, space to figure life out, to remember yourself. Remember why you came to earth at this time, and may you be bold and brave enough to express freely and give it your best. Knowing that there is still more to know, experience, understand. It's okay to mess up. It's a reminder that you're living. You're showing up, you're trying, you're brave, you're courageous, you're bold. I am so proud of you. May you have fun, be open, stay curious, and be brave. I love you all so much. Please let me know your thoughts on this topic in the comments, or come on over to our IG page now, Charlie. That's Charlie with 2 eyes, okay? If you enjoyed this episode, please leave me a like, share the video, and subscribe to the channel and podcast. Thank you for the newbies. I appreciate y'all. And thanks for listening in or watching. Hello, YouTube family. Y'all see me? Okay? I appreciate you all. Please take care. And I will catch you at the next episode. I love you the most.